Where do we start today?
I think that, well, we start in Sydney, Bondi
Okay.
Beach. Um, Yesterday, I don't know,
Mm,
Tinashe, I know this isn't a unique thing to say, that it's not shocking. We all see it coming. This whole thing when we grew up about sticks and stones will break our bones, but words will never hurt us. And we grew up like singing this like it was a nursery rhyme. And
mhm,
it holds no water. First of all, words do
mm,
hurt, especially the way
yeah,
they're being weaponized today, but they also, as we see, lead to actions. What do you think was gonna happen in Sydney, Australia, when the same day that Jews were being massacred across the South, there were people just gleefully marching at the Sydney Opera House, calling to gas the Jews? I mean, what did we think was gonna happen? I In LA,
yeah,
you may have heard yesterday here in Brentwood, that Rob Reiner and his wife were murdered,
mm,
and so that's very close to where I am, and so I happen to be outside, so I'm like, "I just gotta get some air," and I'm like, and of course, my first thought was, like, run to Chabad, like, see what's going on over there, and unfortunately, I have to say, since 10/7, every single time I hear sirens, I think,
um,
is there something horrible happening? Because I think we talked about that the Israeli consulate in Los
mhm.
Angeles is a stone throw from my house.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, especially the first year, the amount of or 2 years, the amount of chaos that was going on over there, it was nonstop. I mean, just always helicopters overhead and sirens and the protesters, tens of thousands of them walking up and down Wilshire Boulevard. And I just like, I don't use the word evil lightly, Tinashe. I really don't.
Yeah,
But what we're seeing right now is is absolute evil,
yes,
and it's evil of biblical proportions.
yes. This is the personification of evil.
I don't know if there is a difference at all between what a Jew would classify as evil or a Christian, because of course we share the Torah, the Old Testament.
Mhm.
And I don't even know that there is a formal definition of evil. You might, because you know the Bible a lot better than I do. But one thing I grapple with, Tinashe, is
Yeah,
there cannot be good without evil. Right,
correct,
because we live in the world of duality. N
correct.
and I don't mean this theoretically, there really can't be. There will always be a spectrum. Even if it were good to very good, good would become evil because there has to be something to contrast. And I think that, on one hand, there's a process going on where people like you and I hope people like me are trying to create that opposite end of the pendulum, right? That the more the evil entrenches, the more we see the imperative to be um the voices, right? The voices
Mhm,
of goodness, of morality, of virtue, of kindness, of humanity, of humanity. What is happening to humanity? And at the same time, sometimes sometimes I get frustrated when
Mhm.
there's a mass casualty event like yesterday, and everybody's like, let's just be strong. Let's just be happy. Let's show them that joy wins. I'm not saying joy doesn't win, but it's becoming a little naive. And I
Yeah.
think that people are so afraid to acknowledge the weight of this darkness right
Yeah.
now that there's like mosquitoes, they're just mosquitoes. That's a bad choice of words, but they're scrambling to find the light, right?
Mhm.
They're like, there must be light. There must be light because people don't know how to function in pure darkness, right? I mean, literally and figuratively, we are our most honed sense, of course, our most prominent and important sense is vision, right? I can tell you as a yoga person, this is why we meditate with our eyes closed because it's the number way one way to create darkness is to block out the world outside of you, right? And people get very afraid of that darkness. And they're like, especially people who don't know what they're doing, they're like, they're always opening their eyes and like, I have to see what's going on. And right now, have you ever tried dining in the dark? Did you ever try that?
What is that?
It's a it's a thing to raise a blind awareness for blindness, and they create a
Mm.
restaurant that's pitch black so you can't see your hand,
Yeah.
right? And you just eat a meal. You realize how hard it is to eat without seeing. But what happens is that you become so disoriented, right? We are
Mhm.
people of light. Like, what was the first thing that God created, right? God
Mhm. Let
was
there be light. Yeah.
let there
The
be light.
separation of light and darkness. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's becoming, I think, harder and harder to separate because I feel as if in this fight in particular, and I'm talking about the war on the Jews, but on Western civilization. And I don't deny that this is about Western civilization, but I also don't want to mitigate that this is about the Jewish people.
Because it
And yeah,
is.
it is. It
Because it
is.
is. Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like we say, "Oh, but it's about Western civilization." Um, Not just because it is, we all know it is, but also so that maybe we could find some more allies. Maybe if
Hmm.
my neighbor thinks it's about him, he'll stand up for this cause because we all put that black square on our walls. And
Yeah.
I don't see anybody with the blue square. I don't see, I mean, not anybody, but I don't see a lot of allies like you who are willing to put themselves out there and say, this is important, not just because it's about Western civilization, but because
Yeah.
it's about humanity.
So it's interesting that you speak of this dichotomy of darkness and light, and how essentially what I even see is we look to manufacture our own version of what light is, right? So it's love and light as if it's a hashtag. Whereas God, Yahweh, Hashem, the great I am, is light.
Yes.
And so what I've recognized, because again, I have, born in this faith, run from it, then went to 100 different modules. And what brought me back, ironically enough, to the true living God was the acceptance that evil is real and it's personified. Therefore, as you said, then that means good is real, but it's not good unpersonified. It too is personified as God, as
Mhm.
creator.
Mhm.
And so man oftentimes from the beginning of time is looking to do it man's own way. That's the original sin, right? I shall be my own God. If you're to go to Lucifer himself, he was the covering cherubim. Here he was in all his splendor and glory, and it wasn't enough. I shall raise myself as high as God. I shall
Mhm.
make my I. And so he had already fallen for this false light because there's no light outside of the true living God. And so when I now draw this into, because some folks out there, they might not have um, the necessary background to understand why am I a Zionist? It makes no sense for a African born, American raised black guy who is a Gentile and a Christian to be a Zionist. But at the core of all those identities is my core in God. And I believe in God's word. And I believe that God says a thing and that thing is. And so through the relationship with Abram, who then becomes Abraham, who then becomes the father of Israel, God's firstborn, that's a relationship that I not only read about, but I believe it to my core. And when I start seeing these things playing out, whether it's from the book of Jeremiah, book of Ezekiel, Isaiah, all of these, mind you, are Jews, just in case any groypers made their way into this chat, right? All of these individuals I'm mentioning are Jews
Yeah.
who at the time were living in Israel. And God was speaking in relationship to such. And God promised to bring, as fellow Christians, our Messiah through the Jewish people. Why? Because God is sovereign and God is smarter than us. But back to the
Yeah.
conversation of light. And it's ironic because is Hanukkah, which is we're leading
Yeah.
into Hanukkah, right? Is Hanukkah not the festival of light?
It is the festival of light. Yeah, and that is, like, the whole concept of Hanukkah is to bring light into the darkness. I mean, even these people, 1,000 people in a park, celebrating a festival of light. And I also want to say, Tinashe, how sad
Yeah.
and sick it is how these jihadis capitalize on the Jewish holidays. You'll of
Yep.
course, like 10/7 happened on Simchat Torah. We have the Yom Kippur War, of course, which,
Yep.
of the greatest infamy. We have the Hanukkah massacre yesterday, and I don't know how much you were paying attention, like, in the beginning of 2024, I mean, just a few months into the war, that Ramadan was
Mhm.
coming, and they're like, "Well,
Mm.
obviously, we have to stop the war because it's Ramadan," and Israel paused the war because it was Ramadan because we respect God, and even if it's not our God, we don't look to attack people when they are celebrating, when they are the
Yeah.
closest to God. But I do want to talk about for just a moment, like what you said about like hashtag love and light, because
Yeah.
coming from the yoga community, right? This is a major hashtag. It's the hashtag. But Tinashe, that's all
Yeah.
it is.
I know.
It's a hashtag. These are
I
not
know.
people who love, and they are not people of light. They have hook, line, and sinker
Yeah.
become among the most anti-Semitic group of people who are out there because of their far left leanings. And
That's
it's
right.
like, don't use the hashtag unless you live the hashtag. It's not that I don't believe that love and light exist. I just don't believe that the people who are using the hashtag are the people who are embodying it. And I get tired of the hypocrisy.
Well, again, bring it back scripturally. If the light in you be darkness, then how dark is the darkness? Because there are people who are living in synthetic light. And it's funny because, I came out of the new age space and I didn't exactly understand that the audience I had built at that time, when I would start to show my whole entire self, right? Politically,
Mhm,
etc., that
mhm.
all of a sudden I would see that venom come out. So it's love and light for when it's love and
That's
light, right? If we're keeping up this front, then we're okay. But as soon as you start introducing these elements that I find triggering, and again, that's when we start seeping into what spirit is behind this thing.
mhm.
I lost, like I said in my story of coming out of the conservative closet, I lost 1,500 followers on Instagram seemingly overnight for having an opinion. This was I
I
wasn't even going the way I'm going now. Like now you know me, right?
I
This was a 30 seconds a snippet uh, skit sort of situation, but it was just how dare you be that?
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, boy, does 1,500 sound like a pleasant number to me. You you can't even count how many tens of thousands of followers I've lost over the years. I mean, granted, I've been in this war,
Yeah,
since well before this war. I
yeah.
remember losing my first, like, dedicated, super dedicated follower with a verbal, lashing after in
Mhm.
2014, and I was just so taken aback. Like, I'm like, "Where did this come from?" Like
Yeah.
like, who is this person who loves me so much except for that I said something in defense of Israel?
Mhm.
And in 2014, like, that really, really struck me, but it's interesting because if you read Coleman Hughes's book, The End of Race
Mhm.
Politics, have you read that book yet?
Not yet.
You should.
Okay.
He is definitely, a very, very important voice in this conversation.
100%. 100%.
But he says that 2014 was the inflection point for really all the explosion of all like race relations and
Mhm.
intersectional disturbances. And what happened in
Yeah.
2014, that was the year that the internet like really took hold as a cornerstone of
Mm.
I want to call it civilization, Tinashe, but I find myself not even wanting to use words like humanity because
Yeah.
I'm losing faith in humans or civilization because there's nothing civil about it anymore.
Correct.
But for lack of better terms, it seems 2014 was that inflection point, and that the culprit is social media. And
Mhm.
I don't know where that goes because quite honestly, you and I are here as as a function of social media. Like there's a lot of good coming out of social media too. Um,
Well,
but
what I will say about social media is like most other avenues, except there's never been one to this magnitude, it's an amplifier. It's a megaphone, and it added an element of anonymity. And not just that,
Mhm,
like, the anonymity of the troll and you never see their face. I mean, like, you're in a car, you see the other person in the mirror, but you lose that sense of there's any sort of ramification. And so the worst
mhm,
of the worst is then magnified in those spaces, and then it's rewarded.
yeah, yeah. Um, but I would love to talk to you if you're open to a little bit
Mm,
about how like this moment
mhm,
in Job is definitely the story that resonates the most with me in the Bible period.
mhm,
Um, but particularly because you were talking about the devil and God and
mhm.
obviously the word devil is evil with a D, and the word
Yeah.
God is good without an O. I mean, the words are like right there embedded
They're
in
screaming
in
at you. Yeah.
yeah. But I think about usually when I think about Job, I think about the guy, right? The
Mhm,
righteousness and in the things that he suffered. But now I'm thinking about the deal with the devil. It's a very weird story that
mhm,
God actually made a bet with the devil and used this guy as as the pawn in this experiment. Job won, of course, because he didn't lose faith. And I have to say that this is probably the story that as the world seems to be crashing down, I keep coming back to and say, Is this a test of faith, God? Is this a test of our faith?" Because we see in Israel, and you hear it from the released hostages, how strongly they have returned to faith. I
Mhm.
don't think it's because they, as Jews, are thinking, "I must return to faith in order to save my soul," but rather that this horrifying experience that they've shared has led them to the conclusion that you mentioned earlier, that there is only God. And if you move away from that, right, then you're moving away from that power that is the only power that could possibly save us, right?
So it's interesting because this was something I was, self-discussing and had a little bit of moment with the wifey to discuss last night probably. And I think it came up in the last interview I did briefly, which is okay, so we think of things from our own carnality, right? In this form, and we have so far that we can think and so wide and whatever it is based on experiences and
Mhm.
presumptions, etc. So for us to put ourselves in the shoes of an infinite, right? Let alone omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, etc. So it's funny because Job is one of the best depictions. I oftentimes refer to Job when I'm actually trying to show the grandiosity of God, where there's a
Mhm.
few chapters that are spent where it's like, okay, now Job is having his response because he's there feeling sorry for himself. Why does this have to happen to me, etc.? And it's okay. Let's start at the beginning, where you hear when I was drawing the boundaries between the light and the darkness, between the firmament and the earth. Well, you hear when I was telling the seas that this is where they can stop and this is where they go. And he gives this entire illustration to the point. If you're reading just through a third of it, you're like, okay, I get it, right? And so there's this element of, all right, so now I'm going to kind of draw it to Moses, and I'm going to bring this all together. So the first time that God's law is depicted is obviously top of Mount Sinai. Moses goes up there, he's communing with God, comes down 40 days later. And of course, human does what human continues to do outside of God, creating false idols, right? And here he is with the law of God and, in his own humanity, throws him down. I'm sick of you people. And he has to go do it all over. And the first of these commandments, and this always used to get me, especially when I was in a place where I was my own God, right?
Mhm.
Why do you need my praise? Why do you need my worship? Why do you need me to follow you? We think in respect of what we're doing for God as if we can do anything for God, the infinite, as if it's not for us.
Right. That's right, and he also gives us free will, which means that we don't have to. I mean, believe me, otherwise
Exactly.
we wouldn't have atheists in the world, right? We wouldn't
Of
have
course.
agnostics. I mean, the fact is that and here's an interesting conclusion that I drew, in my year of contemplation as a monk during COVID, where I barely left my
It sounds
house,
like
and
an interesting time.
yeah, it was the most
The world became
introspective.
monks. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But no, I mean, I think a
Mhm.
lot of people really sat in the sorrow, and I
Ah,
took that year as an opportunity to really, really, really look inside. Not just inside my condo, which I got very familiar with, but really, I grew more that year than I did ever in my life.
mm,
I actually did this project. I think you'd appreciate. I know you'd appreciate.
mm,
Um, One of my close friends had a cousin who died in the very early stages of COVID.
mm.
Remember when they were doing these mass graves in New York because well, they were doing these mass graves in New York because they couldn't bury them fast enough and you couldn't go. You couldn't, like, they couldn't have a funeral. They couldn't.
Yeah,
And
I remember
her
that.
cousin was one of these people. And I said, you know what? I'm going to say some prayers for her on Facebook tomorrow.
Mm,
And so what I did was I read Psalm 23
mm,
and the Kaddish, right? The Kaddish being the mourner's prayer in Hebrew. And
mhm,
then I call it a sermon. I don't know what else to call it, but I talked for a few minutes about whatever.
mm,
Tinashe, I did that every single day for 365 days, but here's what's amazing. I never read a single commentary about Psalm 23. I never
Mm,
read a word about the story behind the Kaddish or the interpretations of this prayer. I came up somehow with 365 messages directly from these two short
yeah.
passages, right? I mean, Psalm 23, I mean, I really need to put this into a book. I have it, but I haven't done
Mhm.
anything with it. Psalm 23 alone, I mean, every single
Yeah,
word is so profound.
yeah,
um, so anyway, so I did that every day for a year, and I didn't know where this information was coming from, right? And so we all have this direct channel if we're receptive. And most people are not receptive, either because they literally have not like created any sort of spiritual ascendancy within themselves or sought to cultivate that, or because they've literally closed it off,
yeah.
right?
It's a rejection. I mean,
Yeah.
man rejects God all the time.
Yeah.
Rebellion, in essence. Mhm.
Exactly. But one of actually, I just remembered why I brought this up. The reason I brought this up was one of the revelations that I came was that people say if God is omnipotent, then how could he bring this plague on the world? How, and then that conversation is always going to go into, and why do we have this evil? And why do we have terror? And why do we have floods? And why do we have all the things? And the answer is that, yes, God is omnipotent and he gave us free will within that
Yeah,
power. And so within
because God is love, and love is impossible without free will. It ceases to be love, right? If somebody is forcing you into relationship, okay, fine, I give in. That's control.
we've all been in that relationship.
Automaton. I mean, well, yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, some more than a few. But this automaton type of relationship, lacks that entire element of you have the choice to be with me or without.
Yeah.
So I just, yeah, I wanted to add that little sprinkle in there.
Yeah, I'll tell you something else interesting is that I consider myself a fatalist. Do you? I mean, let me define fatalist because I know
Okay.
that
Yeah.
different people think of it different ways. Fatalist obviously has the word fatal in it, so it sounds very
Hmm.
bad. Fatalism means that you're a subject of fate, that God has a
Mm,
plan laid out for you, and it's inevitable.
mm,
I've always believed that. It's hard to deal with sometimes. I think I came to um like real grips with this on 9/11, that I'm like, because I kept thinking, why did God put these 300 people on this plane at this moment?
mm,
Like, if nothing is random, that when we look at the order of the world, there's such,
mm.
I mean, there's more miracles within our own body than we could
Yeah.
possibly count in a lifetime. Even somebody
Yeah.
who's severely disabled has more
Hmm.
miracles
Yeah.
than the mind can fathom. And
Yeah.
so if we have this perfect order, and keep in mind, like our bodies are the same percentage of water as the earth itself.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a perfect order, right?
Yeah.
And so again, if I'm a fatalist, then how can I have free will? And so the answer that I came up with on that conundrum was, I am destined to a certain fate, but I get to
Hmm.
choose the pathway to get there. I mean, I
Hmm.
can get to New York by walking.
Yeah.
I could get there by plane. I could get there by driving. I'm still going to wind up in New York, right? And
Correct.
so this is where like these balances between personal power and surrendering our power, I think, like come into confluence.
So I would even view it from this perspective is surrendering your will because we
Mhm.
have no power outside of God, right? Funny enough, the last few words I had with Doug on the last call there that you got to get a little sneak peek into. What
Oh my
what
gosh.
what is the device without its power outlet, right?
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
dead, it's useless, it's nothing. I mean, while it's on, it believes itself to be smart, right? It's a smartphone. It's basically everything. Nothing you can't do with it. And all of a sudden now it needs a power source. And so as opposed to personal power, because that's another again, one, a lot of these words that have been convoluted and created
Yeah.
and make us feel so good about ourselves and maybe even, like you said, give that sense of control as opposed to maybe there is a creator that has the best way for you and also allows you, like you said, to take another way.
Yeah.
And in
Yeah.
that is again, love is underlying, is I will allow you to choose what I have for you, which is life. And we got to the light thing. I am light, so you can choose light, or you can choose darkness.
Yeah. I'm I'm curious
Mhm,
because we both come from the world of love and light.
mhm,
Um, and I have to say, I'm like you, I did like personal coaching and it's all about your
mhm.
mind and if you think good things, you'll create good things in all the things.
Yeah,
Sadly, I'm no longer a part of and can no longer relate to because of what we were
yeah,
talking about the insincerity and in the hypocrisy that is behind that message right now.
yeah.
But when it comes to this concept of manifestation, right? Um, I do like I feel like so much of my fire was extinguished on October 7th and has not come back. And I know that this is my choice. I know that this is a switch. I know that I could turn it
Mhm,
on, but I feel like a person in mourning. And I this is a great contradiction because in Judaism, living in joy is a very, very like important precept.
mhm,
And that we have this prayer on that I always read on Shabbat. It's the only one that I read in English. Everything else I read in Hebrew. But I read it in English because the words are so important. It says like I'm not going to be able to quote it, but God, give me the liberating joy of Shabbat so that I can
mhm,
carry this through the rest of the week as I am
mhm,
commanded to do. That we are supposed to um, be joyful on Shabbat, and it's charging the battery. It's charging the battery until the next week where we can come back to this space. But I'm wondering because again, we both come from this love, light, manifestation, inner power world originally. Like how does something like yesterday hit you? Do you?
S
Yeah.
so I'm gonna give you a full context almost in the same way you kinda outlined it, right? And again, it ties directly back into how did I get here to this phase where or this phase, no, this place
Hmm.
where I'm surrendered to God and his will. And it came from a place which anybody who knew me from time past, there was nobody who knew where he wanted to go and what he wanted to do and what he was going to accomplish, etc., than this guy right here. Until it wasn't. Until I faced the reality that everything was simply mounting. Everything. And I was like stacking problems on issues on things. And they talk about like this proverbial like juggling of tasks. You have glass balls in the air and you have, plastic ones and
Chainsaws.
then exactly yeah, right, the entire circus, yeah. And I found myself in this place where it was this simple, Shauna. I said, okay, I don't know how to handle all of these things. I don't. It was probably the first time I've ever just admitted and said that. And it wasn't even, "Oh, I know, God, you're the God and you're real and it's Jesus." It was, "Show me who you are." The most I know right now for certain is that there is one who created me. That I've never doubted that. And
Mhm.
if you created me, that means you have to somehow know better than I do. It was really that simple, that stripped down. It wasn't me bringing this up and making it just happened in that moment where I'm just broken and I'm just like, I don't know how to do this. When I tell you, at the same time as this sort of breaking down, I'd never in my life also felt such a freedom.
Mhm.
I didn't realize how much I'd created this sort of image of myself that was his own God, even though I used to profess things like, be your own God and, was in the world of manifest your own
Mhm.
reality, etc. And you spoke of the control element. And it's the deepest irony, but when Adam is in the garden in the cool of the day and the presence of God is there with him, he is walking with God. He needs for nothing, he wants for nothing, right? He is experiencing God in fullness. He is given work to do, but it is without the toil, etc. This is before the fall.
Mhm.
That is relationship with God, and relationship with God comes with here's what I made you for. In the same way a potter chooses what the pottery is for. And so the vase decides that today it's going to be a lamp because it no longer wants to be a vase. It knows better. And it struggles through its entire existence trying to be a lamp and then tries to be a chair and tries to be whatever else it can conjure up. And it just simply doesn't work. It feels empowered maybe as a lamp, but guess what? It doesn't work. Feels empowered as a chair for a little bit until it starts to crack at the seams. And until it gets back to its rightful place, which its creator intended it for, it's lost.
Okay, oh, sorry, go on.
So I was drawing all of this to say, when it comes to this element of, well, you know, would you not feel, because it only makes sense, when you see things getting darker, does it not make sense that you yourself feel the weight of the world, per se?
Mhm.
But in the words of Yeshua, be in the world, but not of the world.
Mhm.
I have overcome the world. I am the light. I am the way. And so, because I have placed myself in his hands and I trust in him,
Mhm.
I said, your ways are higher than mine. Your ways are greater than mine. When I see the atrocities going on, it sparks something in me. There is the human side of me, just like the prophet Jeremiah. He was known as the crying or the weeping prophet, right? He was a broken man about his people. Here he is trying to tell his people, the Jewish people, the 12 tribes, return to God before chastisement comes, return to God before you have walked away, you have run,
Mhm.
you have, committed harlotries with the world, and you've given yourself to the Assyrians and the Egyptians and the Chaldeans. And 60 years he's doing this. Nobody's listening, and he's weeping and he's crying and he's mourning, and then he sees the destruction come. And I feel myself in the same place where it's like you're yelling and crying out in the wilderness, and you pray to God that somebody is hearing it, right?
Mhm.
And again, but you're in a place where you're certain in God and allow him to move through you. You're crying out, you're crying out, you're crying out, and then you see it and it crumbles in front of you. Before I had placed myself fully in God because it was me trying to overcome these things or me in my own power. Okay, that's when you start to callous yourself. That's when you start to have to create another narrative, because there's a lot of folks out there who simply ignore what's happened to the Jewish people
Mhm.
because it's more comfortable, because they really don't know God. Because if you really knew God, especially if you call yourself a Christian, then you believe in the full counsel of this. You also know that the story of the Jewish people is from beginning to end, from Genesis to Revelation. So if you believe in this God, then you know that there's an unfolding, but you also know that you have work to do and you have a place in this. And so when I see yesterday, like I said in my video that I put out, there was a stop, slow down. I didn't even think I was gonna report on it at a certain point. I was just going through every single video. I said, "Okay, they're out." I watched everything. People's bodies laying on the floor. I'm the guy shooting from up t like, all of it, and I said, "Feel it." And I didn't understand why God was saying, "Feel it," until I realized what he was doing with that. He said, "I'm using this as fodder, as fuel for you to go out there and continue to do what I called you to do. Don't worry about the next person or the next person. This is what I called you to do. Take the arrows because I got you. You'll be here for as long as I need you to be here for, and then you can come home." And so, I'm gonna tell you straight up, this might be the first time I'm saying it this openly and this candidly. Most people who are Muslim, etc., they call me Islamophobe, etc., and oh, you don't know anything about Muslims. I live in the midst of them.
Yeah.
Most folks don't know that. I live in a Muslim neighborhood, 90 some odd percent. I'm in the tram every day. I'm in the this. I am surrounded by this. And again, I never intended for it, but God had his own plan to be able to put me in the midst of the very thing, but also as Daniel in the lion's den to say, I got you in whatever it is. Be bold.
Do you ever lose faith? Do you ever question faith? I mean, what
All
yeah.
there's I question everything in my humanity, right?
Mhm.
There's a spirit of God that now dwells in me, and that part is perfected because that's of God.
Yeah.
Me in this fallen state and this fallen nature that will one day be redeemed, and I do believe that. But in this current state, everything. I have temptations, I fall, I but the thing is, it's almost like it really is a desire change, right? That's what I
Yeah.
felt happen in me. That's why I believe in the Holy Spirit, in the Ruach. I believe in it because I can't explain how why am I able to when before, I was okay with criticism and maybe I could be controversial, but it was synthetic mostly. Like if
Mhm.
it got to a certain point, it's like, okay, this isn't worth it. Whereas now it's like something in me will drive even further and further and further. And so I might have my doubts, but there's something greater in me. And I believe again, it is the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of God that says, nope, this is what I called you to do. And again, I've already submitted myself. I said, your will be done. That's why I got Jewish folks who don't even understand. It's like, why are you a Jew? Like, are you Jewish? Are you, what's going on here? You one of them Ethiopian Jews? I'm the furthest thing from it.
Right.
But that's what God has called me to do. And I can't even pretend I know the end goal. I don't know
Yeah.
why, because in his perfect wisdom, he understands how everything will play out from the end to the beginning.
Yeah.
And so I play my part in that. And I do want to bring up something else you brought up, which is, you said something, and I get what you were getting to, but it wasn't that God was placing a bet per se, right? That's probably the way it's characterized.
Mhm.
It's Lucifer was trying to undermine God's power. And in God's wisdom, he said, okay, my servant who I have my hand on, I will relent my hand, and you will see that where this man's heart truly is. And
Mhm.
that was used an example. Now you live with that example, but also the heavenly host, every being that was exposed to that to see. Because again, Lucifer, it says he has been a liar from the beginning, a murderer from the beginning. His heart was deceitful. And we see these characteristics playing out. And there are those who will give themselves over, but there are also Jobs in this world who are willing to trust in God, even when it's the hardest and it doesn't make sense in your temporal, it doesn't make sense in the carnal. And then God says, I not only bless you, but I bless you 10 times more. And not only that, but there is greater things because we're still so fixated again on this little short ride, not understanding that there is a greater existence outside of this.
Do you think that the concept of personal joy is inevitable when you submit to God?
So it depends what you think joy is, right? because we have been given pleasure, we've been
Mhm.
given happiness,
Mhm.
right? The love and light usually tends towards its euphoria. So there's sometimes even this overwhelm, like the devil can give you that.
Mhm.
He can give you pleasure all day.
Yeah.
You can indulge yourself in the pleasures. But I think of, let's say, like became the apostle Paul, really started as the zealot and the Pharisee Paul. But here was a man who, after being lashed, beaten, persecuted, thrown in prison, lashed in there, doesn't deserve it. And here he is experiencing the joy of the Lord that you speak of, right? Here you have David in the book of Psalms, and he is being attacked by the very king who once beloved him, and he's having to escape and evade for his life, and he's being hunted down, and he's paranoid, and all of this is going on, right?
Mhm.
And in the midst of that, he can still experience what only God can give. And so I believe that that joy that you speak of, there is a certainty, right? There is a certainty that
Yeah.
God is in control. So I'm not going to feel giddy. I didn't see that yesterday and go, oh, yeah, great. No, absolutely not. I was disgusted. I was filled with, I call it righteous indignation, but I was pissed off.
Mhm.
And I thought to myself, this is y'all fault. That's truly in my flesh. I said, this is what y'all did. I didn't even want to hear from Australia's government. I didn't want to hear any of it. I didn't want to hear the Western leaders say anything because I
Yeah.
was saying in my heart that this is what you did. But in the midst of that, why did I know that things were going to be okay? And so in that, I can say, okay, put out the message that God puts on your heart. And in the end of all of this, and truth be told, this seems sinister, but God is a perfect judge as much as anything else. And so many throughout history have thought that they have gotten away with whatever it is, believing it's all over. They don't believe in a judgment day. They don't believe that there's going to be perfect judgment executed for every single one of us, that you will be held to account.
Mhm. Yeah. I think that what's interesting, so the phrase that comes to mind is ignorance is bliss, right? And so I think that there are two people who find this exultant, whatever joy in the face of whatever treachery they might face, and that is those who refuse to acknowledge it and those who hand it over to God. So again, we're talking about these two polar ends of the spectrum of this duality. Um, and sometimes you look at somebody who is just so disconnected,
Yeah.
and they're so stupidly happy. I know that's a sort of a judgy way of saying it, but they're just going about their business. Everything's fine. I don't care what's going on in Israel. I don't care what's going on in New York. I don't care what's going
Yeah.
on two streets over, or I don't care what's going on in my neighborhood. I mean, in my neighbor's home, as long
Mhm.
as I can find whatever pleasure I need in this moment at any cost, then I can be happy. Why let anything else get in the way? And then the
Yeah.
opposite is, I submit to my God. I am a vehicle of that God. How can I be anything but joyful, knowing that I am fulfilling a godly mission, right? But I think that the challenge right now in this physical realm is just you just keep hitting this wall because Tinashe, there's 2 billion other people who think they're fulfilling God's mission, and it
Mhm.
doesn't look like our mission.
Of course. Of
And
course.
it,
This is, look, the world, yeah, again, in my faith there's basically a transition point of before Christ goes into his ministry, before Yeshua essentially goes on 3 years and is ministering to the people in essence and preaching the gospel. The kingdom is nigh. The Messiah is here. The Mashiach is here. There is a fast for 40 days as the prophets of old, right? And then after the fast, there's a visitation from Lucifer himself, and he says three things. So he essentially meets Yeshua in the wilderness and he says, "Okay, turn this rock into bread." And he says, quoting the prophets of old, "Is it not said by your father or our father, not your father, this is Lucifer, is it not said by our father that man must not live on bread alone or cannot live on bread alone?" And there's another of, if you jump, call the angels to come and save you. Is it not said that you will not tempt your Lord thy God? And then the last one is, see all of this? They're standing at the top of the peak of whatever mountain it may be in Israel. And they said, all of this could all be yours if you bow to me. And he says, well, this is my interpretation. No. But how many people, and that's, again, in my belief, God made flesh. That is Yeshua, Emmanuel, God with us, right?
Mhm.
Imagine us in our carnality, our fallen nature. How many say yes? How many say yes?
Right.
Most. Whatever it is. So we see people who are influencers, whatever, and then next day, different person, different agenda, whatever. They've been offered this, right? Scam this. All of this could be yours if you just, I mean, I know you're working for a Jew right now, but just go ahead. Trust me, I got way more for you. Just appeal to this audience and do these things, whether it's Hollyweird or it's in our own personal lives. How many people choose this, which the Satan, Lucifer, has to offer? Not forever, but at this point in human history, it's his to give. So you speak of 2 billion people on this planet who are going off of a doctrine that was created by a sick, demonic man. I'm going to call it what it is. They could put a fatwa on me all they want. But the prophet that they see as their moral arbiter is a vile man who had vile ideas because they were demonic ideas. The very same spirit of the Antichrist we were warned about from the days of the prophets, from Daniel, whoever it may be, till this very day in the church age. Same spirit. And those who follow this spirit to a T, we see exactly how it unfolds. But that's not the true God. And God will not be mocked. Again, we live in time. We think things have taken so long. God, where are you? Why are you taking so long? A day is of 1,000 years, 1,000 years of a day to the Lord. So we're viewing it from, again, this temporal, from this minuscule understanding. We think it's never going to come. Guess who else thought it was never going to come? Those in the days of Noah,
Mhm.
those in the days of the fall of Jerusalem, and then the fall of Babylon, and then the fall of Egypt. It could never happen. We're too powerful.
Right. So here's the challenging thing is that Judaism and Christianity and Islam are the three monotheistic religions. I mean, maybe there are others, but the three major monotheistic religions. The very concept of monotheism implies that, excuse me, there can only be one God, which
Mhm.
means that we all actually believe in the same God. We just call him something different, or
So
yeah,
that's not actually accurate. It's funny because somebody sent me the book that they recently released, and it was somebody who's an ex-Muslim, and
yeah.
they're basically spent 200 plus pages breaking down how Allah is not the same God.
But, I'm not saying okay, hold on, let me clarify. I don't
Mhm.
mean he is in scripture the same God that we call God. What I mean is
Mhm.
there's no room in the universe for 2 omnipotent gods,
Oh
which
yeah.
means that it's a different interpretation of the same. There can only be one God. If I believe
Mhm.
there's one God in the universe, which I do, I
Mhm.
cannot believe that that's only for Jewish people. That means there's one God that's ruling over the universe. It means that it's the God of me, is the God of you, is the God of that guy, is the guy of the painting, of the couch, of the table.
Mhm.
So that's like a very interesting conundrum, right? Because there can only be one God. That means that our God is the Muslim God. They may not acknowledge it as the same guy, but it is. But here's the thing about Islam that's very confounding.
Mhm.
Because we talk about fundamentalism, right? Which is, taking every letter of the book.
Sure.
If Jews and Christians took every word of the Bible to heart, we would also be living not very modern civilized existences, but
Well,
we have
that's not actually
adapted.
true.
But there
Like again, it's again that's the false dichotomy that's oftentimes created, right? And again, we've been sold the idea. It's like who gave us the idea that Islam is a religion of peace? Who gave us the idea that this thing and this thing are also the same? So,
Yeah.
if you were to live by the actual biblical text, then you would have people who are pretty much perfect human beings. It's like if somebody was a Jainist, they would be sweeping the floor to make sure they stepped on no bugs
Yeah.
in front of them, right?
Yes, but you're talking about following the good parts to the T. There
No, I'm
is
not. No, 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 no,
more,
no.
and
I'm
there
because
are
no, no, no.
some.
Because no, you're talking. So we're talking about Old Testament. You shall stone. Do this. Do this. Do this. So Christ comes as the fulfillment of the law. And so belief in him, I can go through the book from Acts all the way into Revelation. And what you're called to, he says, what is the greatest command? What is our command? Love God with all your heart and love man. Love your brother.
Mhm,
Bless those who persecute you. It was said before, an eye for an eye, but I say,
mhm.
bless those who persecute you, love those who bless, etc. So that is the statutes of Yeshua,
Okay,
who is the cornerstone of Christianity. So I'm again,
okay,
I got to be genuine. If it
yeah.
wasn't so, I would say it. I'd be like, yeah, we're called to do 666 Mosaic laws or whatever it is, but we're really not as Christians.
And that is very similar to in reverse, actually, to of the relationship of the Quran to the Hadiths.
Mhm,
So it's the Hadith that got like super evil. And some people say, "Oh no, we don't believe in that part," and it's like, well, but it supersedes it because it's the newer part of it, right? Because
mhm.
within the Quran, it says very clearly that the Jews are the chosen people and Israel is our land. Like, it says
Yeah,
it right there in the Quran. So if these
I mean, yeah,
people,
40 some odd references to Israel. Yeah.
yeah, if these people who feel like they need to kill every Jew on earth in the name of their God can't acknowledge that their God actually said, guys, inconvenient truth, is Israel is theirs actually. And it's right there on page 32, or whatever. It's but I think that I hope that there's a space for this 7th century barbaric cult to morph into something that is acceptable to modern civilization. I mean, we do see, like, I mean, I listen to the Imam of Peace, and my jaw drops. And I know that a lot of people are like, oh well, that's not real Islam, a Muslim, Islam, whatever. He'll say it is. And if
Mhm.
he believes that he is an imam and he knows a lot better than I do what is or isn't Islam, and he can go out and he can speak about peace and defending Israel and defending the Jews and the family of man, then I do believe that there is hope for this society, but it needs to be reprogrammed and it needs to be reformed. It needs to come into the modern day because it doesn't seem like love somehow is a part of that modern manifestation of their religion. I just don't understand. Like, how can religion, belief in God, unless you're literally a Hashan, right? Be based in anything but love, anything but kindness, anything but the 10 commandments and the golden rule. I mean, isn't that what God is?
But
I
because man makes God in his own image, more likely than God is actually who God is, and we fall into that. So man is making continuously images in his mind in the same way we were oftentimes making them in, stone, wood, clay, gold, silver, etc. Something that we find fitting, something that would tickle our ears. So that's why when we hear about the statutes of the true living God, there's some people who don't like those statutes. They don't like that God made man and woman. They don't like that. And we could say, well, that's offensive to say anything else, but Again, so they create their own version. That's done
Mhm.
in a multitude of different ways.
Agreed. But there has to be a way for Islam to modernize and become a part of the family of man instead of
So, th-
trying to slaughter the
so,
family of man.
so this is what I'll say. There's no family of man without, again, the true living God, right?
Mhm.
Because even we speak of humanity, what is human? What is it to be human? There's no humanness outside of God. So if it's outside of God, then it's darkness. But as far as, Islam and it morphing into something else, it's more likely that people are leaving the ideology in the same way communism is communism.
Mhm.
The ideology is the ideology. Just because you're calling it a political whatever doesn't change its ideological framework, right?
Yeah.
So it's mostly like you said, you've probably seen people who consider themselves as Muslim, but they're, gentle Musliming it up. And then you see people who just leave
Right, right.
because if you're going by the true statutes, then there's no left or right in there. There's no room for it.
I guess that because I mean, Christianity has many, many, many denominations. In Judaism, we have fewer, but we don't have enough people to make many, many, many denominations. But there's vast differences between, like, say, Reform, Conservative, Orthodox. Vast differences, which shows the ability to adapt within the framework of a religion. But the flip side is that because Islam has become it not just has become, I'll say since the Hadith. I'm not talking about has become just since October 7th.
Mhm,
Such a violent religion. I mean, like we look at, for example, the Baha'i, right?
mhm,
What are the Baha'i? The Baha'i left Islam specifically because there were things that they appreciated, but they did not want to be a part of this violence. The Druze, I think, come from exactly the same. Like they have a Muslim lineage, but they reject this violent aspect of it, right?
mhm.
So I guess that my hope, Tinashe, is that the religion itself can evolve, wherein a Baha'i could be within the scope of what is Muslim instead of having to leave, right, to leave the belief system in order to be nonviolent, in order to accept all people. And there has to be a way to modify within instead of just leaving because we could say, oh, people are leaving. I mean, I think of Yasmin Mohammed, who is
Mhm.
amazing and speaks so much about this, and a few others who have been very vocal about leaving. But I can also say that when you're born into a religion, that there's something sacred about continuing of a tradition that's a part of your family, and that I would rather see Muslims who no longer wanna kill people than just people who say, "The only way that I can be a good person is to leave Islam." I want to believe that there is a happy, healthy balance like the Imam of Peace who I know, again, people can say, "Oh, that's not real Islam." As long as he thinks it is Islam, I think it is. Even if it's a new interpretation of it, we need this guy to get the followers that the world needs for its own salvation.
Well, no. Well, you brought up the word salvation, so now we get into what's God's
Sorry, I
plan.
don't mean
No, no,
capital
no. No,
S.
no, no. No, it's okay. No, but no,
Little
but I'm
little
no,
s
but I'm going no, no,
salvation.
no, but it's a great word to bring up because then I would
Mhm,
ask because in all of this, it's look, we're still dealing with man's plan, man's plan, man's plan. What was God's
mhm,
plan? What was God's way? Like that's the thing, right? We want okay, let's make this thing fit our thing. Let's
mhm.
make that thing fit our thing, right? Whether it's Islam, whether it's New Age, whether it's some sect here that you create, whatever it is, trying to make this thing fit that thing. So surely we're all praying to the same God. That's an assumption, right? That's an assumption. There's a desire to say it must be. No, there is only one God, but just like Abraham when he formed a relationship with the one true living God,
Right.
the people before him weren't doing so.
They could be
So
worse they could be worshiping a different God, but they have the same God is
So
what
they have the same God, but
that's right.
they're not in relationship with him.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So that could be a reality as much as anything else. So there is a way that he has made. I mean, God is still a God of order and law and
Mhm.
structure as
Mhm.
much as he is
Mhm.
of artistry and fluidity and all these other aspects, right? Everything works in concerts together. Why? I don't know. He's brilliant. I can't can't understand a fractal of even how my body works,
Right.
let alone how the entire known and unknown universe is constructed. So again, it's my question, if I am genuinely a curious individual who cares to know who God is instead of what do I need God to be for me to be comfortable
Mhm.
and me to keep the same framework of mind or lifestyle or whatever it is God, who are you? Show me who you are. Not me having to keep my same constructs so I can appease my childhood, I can appease the way in which I grew up or didn't or this, that, and the third. Who are you?
So I'm gonna ask you a question, that
Mhm.
I've struggled with personally because I think too much. I think too much. Um, which shows I think too much because 'cause I'm thinking about thinking too much.
You're thinking about thinking too much? That's very Seinfeld. That's funny. I'm thinking about thinking too much, therefore I think too much. I think too much, therefore I think it all. Good.
W what does submission and in full acceptance and handing your life over to God,
Mhm.
I don't even know how to like, how does that manifest? Like, how like, do you never second guess your own thoughts or feelings? Do you like, I think the closest that I can think of is there was this one concept in the book Conversations with God. I think that's where I read it, 25 years ago. But it's resonated with me and I think about it every day. It's like no matter what you think, go with your highest thought,
Mhm.
right? Meaning I see a guy on the street, he looks like he could sure use a good meal and a place to sleep tonight. I should give him
Mhm.
$500. It's like, does he really need $500? I worked so hard for that $500. And honestly, like that guy just gave him a nickel. Like, if I
Mhm.
gave him $250, that would already be like an extraordinary gesture. I'll give him $250.
Mhm.
And then I'm like, "Oh, wait, hold on. Like $250, like Christmas and Hanukkah are coming up. I have all these expenses, I got to deal with my own stuff, like
Mhm.
I don't really have $250 to spare. What if I gave him like $100 and called it a day? I'm sure that it
Yeah.
would be
You
right
end
with
up giving
the
the guy a dollar. You're like,
that
you didn't convince yet.
that's exactly it. So
Yeah.
to me, handing it over to God is go with your first best instinct because your first instinct, if you're a good person, will always be the biggest, best. And then you could call it the devil, you call it whatever you want. The guy on the other shoulder is like, really? Do you have to do all that? How does it
So
manifest for you to hand over your
so I
daily
wanna
life, your practical life?
yeah. So I wanna start with, the good like, because if you're a good person, right? So we create our own standard and our statute, and then there's his,
Mhm.
right? So I'm thinking I'm a good person. Most criminals think they're a good person. I
Do
know that
they?
because I came from that world. Yeah, I came from that world. Most of them are justified. Like, there's few who are like, "I am a terrible human being," whatever, and usually those people will change because there's too much cognitive dissonance, and usually those people end up going, deep into faith, ironically. But most other folks selling dope, robbing houses, etcetera, well, see, the system did this to me, I grew up in this and this way, it's always justified.
But is justified and being a good person the same thing? You think they really think like I'm being a good person by selling these drugs or breaking into his house?
Well, but you go to that place, the reason you justify this is psychological
Mhm.
sort of jargon, but if you have cognitive dissonance between what you're doing and or what you think you're doing, and what you're actually doing, and they're usually juxtaposed. You have
Mhm.
to get to the side of what you think you're doing in order to continue that behavior. And so it becomes a thing of, well, I'm actually, like, I'll tell you straight up, for me and the conversations I used to have with the people around me, it was that. It was justification circles, and this is actually good for us. And these people just don't understand. So the guy who's stealing is saying, well, it's good because my kids are getting fed, or this person or that. Well, I take care of my people, right? Biggest drug
Right.
dealers. They would always have a thing of, well, I'm taking care of the community. I'm buying turkeys. I'm doing this, that, and the third, right?
Okay.
So yeah, we become self-justified in a lot of different ways. But again, to get to the main question, which you said, this thing of submission, right? Look, for me, it comes back to this thing of, all right, do you have doubts? Yeah, because the carnal mind is continuously in opposition to God. I believe in the genuine fall of man, and then there was a plan for redemption for man through the love of God. There was a plan for mankind. Now, we put a religious thing on it as far as, you call it Christianity, but in this religious context, it was Jews who had not even yet gone into the Gentile world, and they were called the people of the way. 150 of them, in Pentecost and in this little structure that were receiving the Holy Spirit was sent out, commissioned into the rest of the world. So those individuals were the people of the way. They were following the way that God had made. And if you go into the Torah, you'll see throughout there was always a salvation plan, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Isaiah 53 is probably the clearest representation of that, of every single prophetic thing that's even going to happen in the Mashiach's life. So here we have a plan for redemption, a savior to come, because God said, this is the way that I have made.
Mhm.
Why? Because in his infinite wisdom, he knows. And so for me, I told you early in my experience getting to this place, I just said, I don't know, but I know you do, and show
Yeah.
me. And it's always, the high things get brought down, right? All throughout the Old Testament, the ones who exalt themselves are always brought down. Whether it's Lucifer in his high mindedness, if it's Pharaoh, if it's the Jewish people, if it's the Gentile world, it doesn't matter. A high thing exalting itself. But if you humble yourself, I will raise you. And that's also in understanding. I have seen people who were the worst of the worst, and all of a sudden their lives were transformed, but because they hit a point where it's like, I don't know what to do. Some of them it's in a cell,
Mhm.
some of it's in a bar, strung up, whatever it is. Wife is gone, kids are gone, entire life is imploding on itself. And that's where they have to find themselves to say, God, I don't know. That's when they humble themselves. It's hard for a full belly to oftentimes get to a place of humility.
Yeah.
And so where I met God was at a place where I said, God, show me. And so you talk about faith, and, it's like, okay, I can't speak for every single person who calls themselves a Christian. I can just speak to myself and how Yeshua showed up in my life.
Mhm.
And so I look at people like, C.S. Lewis, who was a brilliant orator, a brilliant writer, yet he was an atheist, and he was wrestling and he wanted to deny this thing. Yeah, most people don't even know that. He was a
Yeah.
brilliant, yeah, he was brilliant. And you'll get a kick out of this. He actually met Tolkien in university, and Tolkien is the guy who basically would debate him and go back and forth and question his assumption. And so here you have Mr. Lord of the Rings, and here you have Mr. Narnia, duking it out over who is God, what's the true nature of God, who is this Christ, is there a Messiah, etc. And through
Amazing.
all that, what you see with C.S. Lewis is there's a point of all that's left is his pride. That was all that was left. It was, I can't accept
Mhm.
this because of me, not because of any information, not because of, I know, but I can't accept it yet. And there's so many folks in that place. Because
Yeah.
again, God didn't go, look, I created a religion for you. No, he came to abolish the religious thing that we were trying to do works, 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 works. And it wasn't gonna be enough. And he said,
Mhm.
here's grace.
Yeah.
Here, so no man can boast. Here it is. Works, 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 works. Who was Yeshua speaking to? The ones who were trying to continue to impose the works, the works, the works. How dare you not, how dare you heal a man on the Sabbath? And it's like, oh, do you not pull your donkey out of a hole in the Sabbath?
Yeah.
You know? What about the heart? God looks to the heart of man. He's not looking to, oh, he's with prostitutes. He's with tax collectors and these ones and those ones. He's with sinners. And he said, yeah, I mean, yeah, I came for sinners, not those who are without sin. right? Does a doctor not come for those who are ill?
Wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I Something to chew on. I
Yeah.
never really thought about that, you know?
Ask.
Yeah.
Prove yourself. God is not afraid of that. He's not afraid of, I don't prove yourself. He's not afraid of that. I promise you.
That's not no, I have faith. Faith isn't my issue. I never
Of
thought of the
course.
concept of God showing up for the sinner.
Mhm.
It's so interesting because, my growing up, my mom, anytime anything did not, like, go our way the way that we
Yeah.
expected it to, she's like, "Life is not a meritocracy. You do it because you do it. You don't do it because of the reward at the end of it." And, you look sometimes at who, someone like whatever, the lowest of the low, Jeffrey Epstein has his own island and
Yeah.
has, all the wine, women, and song that could fulfill his
Yeah.
heart. And, he had the world at his feet and all the
That's right.
leaders wanted to know him. And, at face value, it's like, wow, I want that fame. I want,
Yeah.
wait, hold on.
No,
Before
I
I
know
get
you don't want
it
what co I
out of
get you don't want the
context,
island, you just want the island. I get it,
right,
trust me.
right, right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
But,
Yeah.
that's an extreme example, but,
Yeah.
it seems like there's a lot of people who are
Seems
ah,
like they're winning.
it seems like they're winning and that they do not have any connection to God or to even spirit, meaning something beyond their physical existence and their immediate, like, hedonistic desires. And yet, you know and then I have this the guy who used to clean our building, who
Mhm.
every time I saw him, I mean, he wanted to give me blessings, and he wanted to, just take care of me and to make sure I'm okay. And this guy drove a car that was, like, taped together with scotch tape, and he
Mhm.
couldn't afford his medical bills, and all he could say is, "God is great. God is great," like,
Yeah.
and that was, like, to me, I think of all the people who have taught me about faith in life not being a meritocracy, was when we talk about finding joy in just owning that faith. This guy was the very face of it. But I do come back to that concept of, we have, as you would say, carnal pleasure. That's a weird word, because then it sounds like just I'm talking about sexual. I'm just talking
Yeah,
about
of
of
course.
the body,
Yeah.
meaning everything that we enjoy
Fleshly
as
desires,
humans. Yeah.
exactly. Mhm.
And then you have that rapture with the small r, that you get from. I was realizing it, in fact, in synagogue, this last, I go every Saturday morning, that I'm just like,
Mm.
this is my happy place, just because I'm surrounded by people who I just know have my best intentions at heart, and because they believe in God, because they are here to, like, give of themselves and in into I'm in a congregation, oddly enough, that's almost all Persian. And
Mm.
so they have different
Wow.
traditions than we do. And when I see them, when you grew up in a repressive regime, the amount of appreciation that they have for the freedom of worship, and they do this thing where when the ark opens, right, where the Torahs are,
Mhm.
um, in America, I mean, we stand, but they do this thing where they, like, hold their hands up and they pull it in, and they have all these rituals that are just so, and I'm like, oh, it gives me the chills to watch how connected they are to spirit. And I'm like, when I'm sitting in this room, I know I share a spirit with everyone around me. When I go into the world, I feel, since 10/7, hostility, whether it's there or
Mhm.
not, and that's on
Yeah.
me. But it feels like, does this person want to kill me, right? And so there's there if we could get the sense of a shared spirit in a synagogue or a church, which you always will, right? Especially when you sing, right? When you
Mhm.
sing with the congregation, you know that not just on the same page of the prayer book, but you're on the same page. You're on, as we would say, the same wavelength, right? You're one in
Mm,
spirit, and that's that feeling that like I feel talking to you, like it
oh,
feels safe and it feels comfortable and it feels like, so I'm Jewish, you're Christian, but we're in the same space with God, right? And I
mhm,
think that when I go into the world now and I see darkness, I just see disconnection from God. That's what I see.
mhm,
I see a godless society, and I think it's very simple.
yeah,
And I think that God, to tell you the truth, does not even have to be anything that's prescribed by anybody or any book. If you could find the thing that is bigger than you, that connects you to all people, I think the whole world would come to a much, much higher realization.
well, I mean, that's what the postmodernist idea was, right? We're gonna be a new world where we no longer need the actual God, but instead will create a utopia based upon humanity. And then what they created was a replication of humanity's, again, in current form, in humanity's darkness and humanity's selfishness or whatever, covered and masqueraded in love and light. Because
But
where,
yeah,
mm-hmm,
let me be clear. I'm
mm-hmm.
still talking about a God. Talking about submitting to the highest power that is above all.
Yeah, the God of, I mean, there's a living God, right?
Yeah, I'm
The
not
true
talking
living
about
God.
humanities.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
talking about understanding that there is something greater than all of us that is creating this order, but also created us
Mhm.
as a living organism, that we could either act as a cancer within that organism, or we can act as a healthy cell,
I mean,
right?
yeah, are we walking in darkness or in light? It comes right back to the very thing you brought up in the beginning.
Yeah,
It's, are we in darkness? And he is the light. So when we're walking in him. And again,
yeah,
for yourself, as we're having this conversation, for anybody out there, it's ask.
yeah,
It says, ask and you shall receive. Knock and the door will be open.
yeah.
That's to speak on the nature of God, the seeking heart, the heart that is genuinely looking for him and who he actually is and how he's shown up
Mhm.
is there. And so to even tie up that last sort of question you have for me, which is, the thing of, do you doubt? Do you lose faith and things of that nature? And it's, if faith is a core element, then the faith never wavers, but there is doubts, right?
Yeah.
And the doubt is top of mind. It's this or
Mhm.
that, it's this or that, it's this or that. But at the core, there's a knowing, and knowing supersedes even the faith, quote unquote, right? And so again, that's only come from surrender. So
I don't know if I mentioned this last time we talked, but, my
yeah,
favorite biblical passage happens to be Christian, and it's,
wow.
if you have the faith of a mustard seed, right?
Just see,
Nothing will be impossible for you. You can move
yeah.
mountains.
Mhm.
In the reason I love this so much is, because I'm actually in within the tiniest. I mean, they could have said a grain of sand,
Yeah.
because faith is indivisible, right?
Mm,
Absolute faith means that there actually is no doubt, zero doubt,
mm,
right? And so, can we all live in pure faith? I mean, I think it's the hardest thing in the world. That's why it's just a mustard seed, because to conjure
mm,
that much faith with zero doubt, without ever saying, like, can I really move that mountain?
yeah,
Because if I stood in front of a mountain and said, "Move," th Tinashe, there's no way that I could tell you with a straight face that I would really believe with every ounce of my being that it's gonna,
yeah,
move. But, right, that mustard seed says, if you can stand in front of that mountain and say that without even, like, the tiniest, you know, speck of doubt, then it will. So how do we take that leap? How do we take that leap in believing that
mm.
we can move mountains, because faith is indivisible.
Well, the way I look at it is, I had faith that this chair was not going to fall apart, so I sit on it. that this desk gonna fall upon me, that this building won't. We as humans, ironically enough, we have faith.
Mhm.
It's just where is our faith placed, right? Is it in the indivisible, as you like to say? Is it in the indestructible, or is it in the fleeting and the now?
Yeah. Do we have anything but the now?
Well, I mean, yeah, you could conjure up 1,000 different things, but yeah,
Yeah,
is our faith in Him who created all things and all things exist, or is our faith in
yeah.
the wear and tear, the island that's still gonna need renovations 20 years from now? Yeah.
Well, Tinashe, I just wanna
Mm,
thank you
of
for
course.
helping me when I listen to you.
Oh,
It doesn't matter if we have different religions, we have the same faith, and, that you bolster that for me, and when I need
mm,
a little bit of help, I'm like,
oh,
let's see what Tinashe is up to
oh,
today." Because you got nothing but
thank you.
time, and you've been so generous with that time,
Of course.
not just with me today, but just with the world, and,
Thank you.
they're hearing your message, loud and clear. I love watching your numbers skyrocketing,
Thank you.
and, I know it's not about that, but it is because it means that people are listening, and it means that you
Mm,
are making, like, a real difference in this world, and
thank
I
you.
just wanna tell you how much I appreciate you, how much I
Thank you,
appreciate
Shauna.
your voice, how much I
Oh,
appreciate your allyship, how much I
mm.
appreciate your no BS way of saying, "I stand for this because it's
Yeah,
the right way," because it
yeah,
is the right way, and we're
yeah.
living in a time that has forgotten that everything is not just the equal. That there
Mm.
is good, there is evil. We are fighting a war against evil, and you are, like, right there on the forefront.
Thank you so much, Shauna. Thank you. I appreciate you. Much love for you. And again, thank you for making my whole night. Now I'm gonna have this perma smile on my face. So
Good. Well, listen, dude, I've
thank
needed
you.
that perma smile. It's been a rough 24 hours,
Yeah.
and, thank you for putting the smile back on my face as well. So until
Thank you.
next time.
Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Now, if you'd like to stay around, make sure to click that little subscribe button down there, or you can show some love by going to the description below and clicking on the button titled Buy Me a Coffee. Leave a little something there, or click on the Cash App. Leave a little something here. Till the next time, peace. I've been up for hours, I've been up for days, yeah. Staring at the ceiling, I've been counting strays, yeah. I've been in my feelings, I've been out of mind. I've been getting visions of the other kind. Yeah, I've been up for weeks. I'm in the count of blessings over count of sheep. I can never be the type to limit when it comes to me. I used to be the pleaser for the people I ain't even need.